Morning, everyone, and welcome back to our third session of the day. This session is all about modernizing data architecture using data visualization. So we'll be joined by Chris Day, who's the Director of APAC Sales Engineering at Denodo, and he will be sharing all his lessons, all his thoughts, all his experiences in this space, and we'll be discussing that with you. So, Chris, I'll hand it over to you to take away and talk about your subject.
Great. Thanks, Isaac. Great to be here, and welcome to everyone. As we go through, if you do have any questions, then please post them, and be more than happy to answer them. So as Isaac introduced, I'm the Director of Sales Engineering for Denodo across the Asia Pacific region, and it's all about helping organizations address the requirements that they have as we go through digitization and digital transformation, so that they can ensure that their architectures meet those requirements. So let's start today's discussion with a customer use case. Big machinery manufacturer, we're all aware of the amount of data that's in all environments, and the amount of data coming off these large mining machines. This particular manufacturer was getting market pressure from a low-cost vendor, so getting some price pressure. So really they had an option of lowering their price, thus affecting their margins, or coming up with a way to continue to differentiate themselves, to add value and secure those customers against the competition within the marketplace. They chose to come up with an alternative to add some value. So using Denodo data virtualization, they were able to blend in all of their operational systems with the streaming data coming off their large manufacturing vehicles, so that they could build a total view, a complete view of what's happening with both the machinery and with the customer. This meant now that they could provide higher value service to their customers, be able to assist them with understanding how that machinery, how that asset is performing, and when it should in fact be maintained rather than waiting for it to break. I'm sure you appreciate, if it breaks, well, that's a lot of downtime, a lot of money involved in doing that. Not only were they able to improve customer service, but they could actually increase the revenue by understanding what's happening within their customer base and reselling this insight, this information back to both their vendors and the customers. Ultimately, this led to lower warranty costs for all of their customers, and so they had better customer satisfaction. So across all industries, what are some of the challenges that we see that sort of hamper or prevent organizations from embracing new opportunities? Well, there's always the need for getting more accurate decision making, making those decisions faster, being able to get some insights in a timely manner. And we have to cope with ongoing technical change, new platforms, new insights, new tooling comes into the marketplace. So how do we leverage these while not disrupting the ongoing day-to-day business? And then being able to do this in an environment that has increasing risk from regulation and compliance, whether we're talking about internal regulations and governance requirements, or whether we're talking about requirements that are enforced on your organization by external bodies. All of these things have to be satisfied in order to be able to continue to do business, as well as just improve and be more effective. So why are these such a problem? Why does this present such a challenge? Well, if we have a look at an IT environment, we all understand we have multiple different types of data, multiple different applications, storage units, and users want access to all of the data, and they want it now. So the other requirement is that they want access to the data pre-integrated, up to date. They want to ensure that it's ready to go each and every time. This means that IT, and it's not necessarily IT's fault, the way that they can respond in a quick and timely manner is to build these point-to-point integrations, to move data around, to build new silos, which, while it solves the initial problem, from a strategic point of view, it becomes very brittle, becomes very expensive and unmanageable. So what's an alternative to this? How can we take this environment and add the capabilities that we require in order to be agile, in order to deliver the requirements that business and organization is looking for? Well, let's take a look at a point of view from Gartner. As we can see, over time, we've gone from this 1980s view of the world where we're predating the enterprise data warehouse, and each organization may in fact only have one or two applications. So getting that single view, that complete view of the business is really, really easy because there's only one or two places to go. As we continue forward in time, we get to the 1990s, databases become commoditized, more and more databases, more and more applications, and so we end up with silos right across the organization. The answer to this was the data warehouse, the ability to bring all that data together and unify the view so we can do enterprise reporting. As we move forward again into the 2000s, we've got new sources of data. We've got streaming data. We're starting to talk about big data. And so to get a handle on all of these new sources of data, to build that single view and understanding, the data lake is born. It helps us to fix a whole lot of capabilities and problems, or deliver capabilities, that the data warehouse doesn't accommodate. And so now we end up with data warehouses and data lakes. As we move forward again, the continuing explosion of data means that even this environment, this new capabilities are not cutting it. There's still problems. And so we're introducing the logical architecture, the ability to unify, collect, and connect all of the data across our enterprise without having to physically move it, without having to put it together in a single repository. And so this logical architecture allows us to unify this, to build a logical environment, a virtual environment around all of the data without having to stand up all of that extra infrastructure, without having to replicate and make additional copies of data. So if I just quickly walk through that again, just sort of talking about how that might look in an environment, we can see here we're starting with our databases and our ERP. The data is firmly in those environments. And you'll see even as we progress forward, where we've got more and more applications, the data continues to pool or head into these environments. And so as we adding more data, adding more complexity, applications, you can see that we're having to build up an environment that is able to cope with all these new data sources. Again, data is pooling, is driving towards particular storage or processing systems. So now when we actually want to use this data, we end up building point-to-point integrations. We end up connecting specifically for those data sets. So how does this affect us when we want to move forward, when we want to start adding new capabilities such as machine learning or edge computing? Well, we could continue to do the point-to-point, but as I've said before, that becomes brittle. It becomes very expensive to change. It can't cope with the timeliness and the speed at which business wants to come. And so we leave users sort of scratching their head, struggling to understand how to get the insights, how to understand and meet the data requirements that they have. So that's the problem. What are some of the things that the business is trying to deliver, or the objectives that they're trying to meet in order to satisfy these problems? Well, they want a single entry point, one place to go to get all of this data. Not having users build all their own point-to-point integrations, not having users relying on particular data sources, because that data source may go away, it may be upgraded, it may change. Also being able to do self-service so that the users, the consumers of the data, can find, understand, prepare, analyze the data all on their own in a consistent manner, so that our IT doesn't have to be the sort of default data wranglers of the organizations. They can continue to do what they do best about being strategic for the infrastructure environment. And then all of this has to be done in an environment that is secure, that's governed, that it is consistent, regardless of where that data comes from, regardless of how that data is being consumed. So these objectives are what modern business is looking for. That single place to go, that single entry point. The self-service, driving consumers to be able to meet their data requirements, meet their analytical requirements, all on their own. And making sure that regardless of who and what and where they're using that it's complying with all the security and governance requirements. So one answer to this might be a data lake. Well, what's a data lake? At its simple level, it's a piece of storage infrastructure that holds vast amounts of raw data in its native format. So it's a lake. You just pour all the data in, regardless of where it is. It's generally based on Hadoop, not always, but generally. Though we still find that Hadoop is the foundation for the ecosystem that allows you to build up this vast storage and processing environment. And it provides an analytical environment. So the tooling and understanding and software to take all this raw data, understand it, use it, and come up with an outcome. It's great. Sounds like the answer. Though in 2019, in Gartner's Augmented Data Catalog report, they actually found that 80% of data lake projects will fail, all because users are unable to find, inventory, understand, curate that data. And so this means that we're going through all this effort to pull all this data together, to put it in one place, and there's a high likelihood that it'll fail. 1 in 5 will be successful, but a physical data lake has a lot of risk, a lot of overhead, a lot of expense associated with it. And it's usually only for a particular set of users, because you have to have that technical knowledge, that inherent understanding of how to use the environment before you can get any insights out of it. So how about we consider a virtual data lake? A data lake taking that concept of logically connecting all of our physical repositories together so that it does present out as a single interface, a single place to go for all of our users to get that common understanding, providing a consistent security and governance model, the ability to connect to all of that data, regardless of where it is, regardless of where it's being processed. So here we're calling out a virtual data lake, but how about we call it a multi-purpose data lake? A place where it's not just the users, the roles within the organization that have that technical ability, that understanding of data and how to use it, but a place where all the users can go, regardless of what their data requirements are, regardless of whether they're talking about operational reporting or machine learning. So why am I talking about a multi-purpose data lake? Well, when we talk about a multi-purpose data lake, it gives you these capabilities. Because it's logical, we now don't have to replicate that data. We don't have to have multiple copies of data around the organization. It becomes an option, not the mandatory requirement. we can now get access to all of that data, regardless of whether it is, whether it's on-premise, in the cloud, across multiple applications. And it allows us to leverage all of the processing and storage capabilities within the environment. So we don't have to have data residing in a specific or particular capability in order to get access to the data. That multi-purpose means that now, as I said, it's one interface that's consistent access for all of the users, not just the technical users. It does provide a platform to do consistent security and governance, so that when we start talking about customers and assets and locations and things, it's all consistently modeled, and it's all got a consistent access control policy. And ultimately, because we're providing a platform that is capable of satisfying multiple purposes, multiple uses, we're getting better return on investment from the time and effort that we've put into building that repository, building that unified view of the data. So I've spoken here about data virtualization. Well, let's introduce data virtualization. It's a way of unifying the integration and delivery of data across your organization, providing abstraction from the consumption of the data to where the data is actually being stored and processed, being able to do that integration without replicating, and the easy access to data in a highly performant real-time manner. Also providing a way of discovering and understanding that data through unifying the metadata and being agnostic or very tolerant of what those data consumers are, so that it's not tightly coupled with any particular consumption outcome. This means that we can now build a virtual data lake which has access to all of the data sources, whether we already have a physical data lake, whether we already have an enterprise data warehouse or an operational data store or a data mart, to all of those software as a service applications that the organization will use, whether we're talking about marketing or CRM or HR, being able to provide consistent access. And the files, the Excel spreadsheets, the CSV files, the JSON payloads that are within the organization that are very valuable, that often don't end up in the enterprise data warehouse. Unifying all of that access, which means now it's very easy to ingest and cache and prepare that data, giving you options around whether it can be purely logical, purely virtual, or whether it can be physical. Being able to build the right performance profile for the data, rather than just assuming that all the data needs to be hot at all of the time. And then able to leverage all of the different processing engines that we have within our environment, whether we're talking about relational databases or Hadoop systems or analytical appliances, and making that consumption, that processing, totally transparent to the user. So the user no longer has to understand or know the specifics of that underlying processing engine. The platform can just utilize it, understand the query that the user is asking for, optimize that query, and choose the best processing engine in order to satisfy the query, all transparently. Some typical use cases that our customers talk about when we start talking about logical data lakes is IoT integration, just as for that large machinery manufacturer, being able to blend in all of that fast-moving, really small, agile IoT data with all of the operational data that may reside in our CRM or our ERP or the enterprise data warehouse, and do that transparently and as required without having to physically shoehorn the data into those repositories. Another use case is also talking about data warehouse offloading. So taking historical data and putting it into a more cost-effective platform but still making that data available should the users want to, thereby minimizing the expenditure associated with our enterprise fast performant data warehouse and minimizing the storage footprint and cost of keeping all of that historical data in a repository that's designed to do that. Another comment in support of multipurpose data lakes is a report by Rick Vanderlands that he wrote in 2018 about architecting a multipurpose data lake. He sees multipurpose data lakes as able to support a broad range of users, not only the data scientists and the machine learning set of users, but also the operational, the governance users, stewards, the data owners, the self-serve reporting, and being able to do this without minimizing, without, I suppose, compromising delivery of data for those data scientists. So it is that single platform, that single place to go to get all of your data across the enterprise. Let's take a look at a customer. This is a customer called Asurion. You may, in fact, already be a customer of Asurion. Asurion provide white label insurance and warranties to electrical goods manufacturers for mobile phones and televisions and electronic or technical appliances. They're located in many countries around the world, have, as you can see, a high number of employees. And the challenge that they had was how can their data architecture continue to cope with the changing requirements of the business and of the customers when they spread across so many geographic environments. They have to meet all of the regulatory requirements of each country that they're doing business in, but still be effective about coming to market with new products, new opportunities. And so they wanted to have a platform that it would enable them to reduce the time it took to build a new service, to build a new product, to meet those regulatory requirements, regardless of which country the data is residing in. And then have that centralized enforcement, that centralized understanding of both the governance and the security of their data platform. Asurion chose Denodo and built a hybrid data layer. So a layer that unifies the data both on-premise and across the different cloud providers, meaning that it becomes totally transparent to all of the users. So now, not only are they able to meet the requirements of the business in that single unified platform, they can also ensure that they're meeting the regulatory requirements by not having to pick all the data up and relocate it, just to be able to do reporting on it. It also meant that now they could have that consistent security layer, regardless of whether the data resided on-premise in their enterprise data warehouse with the well-managed, well-understood security model, or whether it is a in-cloud application that, in fact, may not conform to the enterprise requirements at base, and so some extra work has to be done. Overall, it meant that they could now remove the complexity of data users getting access to all of the data, improving the time it takes, reducing the time it takes to come up with new products and services for the market. So I'd just like to leave you with some takeaways around data virtualization and how, in fact, it can assist you with modernizing your architecture. Data virtualization is that platform that allows you to build that multiple use environment, contact point, a place to go for all of the data, thus reducing the costs associated with both infrastructure and copying data, and increasing the level of collaboration because all the users are now using that central data platform. It allows you to get access to all of the disparate data sources, whether on-premise or in the cloud, across multiple cloud providers, software as a service, in real time. So we're reducing the time it takes to deliver the data, as well as ensuring that those users that need real-time data get access to it. Supporting self-service and data discovery by centralizing all of the metadata and providing that out through a user-friendly data catalog, which is also now centralizing the governance, the common understanding, the security of the enterprise data assets. So if you're interested in finding out more about Denodo and data virtualization, I'd encourage you to download our Data Virtualization for Dummies book. It steps through the concepts of data virtualization in greater detail, as well as explores some additional use cases about how data virtualization has been able to assist organizations and why they chose data virtualization over some other integration strategies. If you're also interested in getting hands-on with Denodo, I encourage you to register for one of our Denodo test drives. They're a free environment. You simply register on our website, and then you can choose from 3 different use cases. Once you choose, Sandpit environment will be spun up in one of the cloud providers. It will send you some access details and a script that you can actually walk through and get hands-on with the product without actually having to install or configure or define any environment. So you can get a very quick understanding of Denodo and how it works and some of the capabilities of it within 1 to 2 hours. I'd encourage you to do that. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for participating today. And yeah, if you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So thank you very much.
I just realized I was muted. Thanks so much, Chris, for that presentation. That was fantastic, and I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your insights with us. I think it was really valuable for our attendees, and we do have a question for you that I will ask you. So, does the concept of data lakes, real or virtual, increase cybersecurity risk by storing all data in a single location?
Yeah, and that's something that an organization always has to consider is where that data is stored, why it is stored there, and are we meeting the regulatory requirements? I think the benefit of using data virtualization is that you can now store the right data in the right place. So no longer is it necessary for you to relocate all your data from on-premise into the cloud, as an example, in order to get the scale and cost effectiveness of that. It means you can now build that hybrid environment where you can use the cloud for what it's good at, for the scale, but still use your on-premise environment for the security and governance that you're trying to meet. Particularly important when we come to talk about financial services and insurance companies. So I think it allows you to get the best of both worlds, if that's a fair enough answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. But thank you so much again, Chris. Really appreciate you joining us. And thank you to Denodo for sponsoring the event as well. It's really fantastic to have you guys. And obviously, we can't have our events without our generous sponsors. So we really appreciate you guys supporting the event and being involved as well. So as everyone can see, Jessica from Denodo has also uploaded links to get the data visualization for dummies. So if you are interested and wanted to look further, the links are in the discussion forum for you guys to access there. But thanks again, Chris. Really appreciate your insights and having you on to share them today. It was fantastic.
Thanks, Isaac.
Thanks, Chris. All right, guys, so the last presentation of the day is in the next session space. So jump off here, jump onto there, and we'll conclude the day. But thanks, everyone, for joining, and thanks, Chris, again.